I had a routine back then. Every Sunday morning, I'd wake up before 6, make a pot of dark roast, the kind my wife Lorraine used to buy from the little shop on Kendall Street before she passed, and I'd sit at the kitchen table with the newspaper. Not reading it, really. Just holding it, listening to the house settle around me. It was a good quiet, the kind you earn after 40 years of working. I retired from the county assessor's office 3 years ago, 37 years of showing up, doing the math, going home. I have a small pension, some savings I've been careful with, and a house that was paid off in 2019. My name. My deed. Mine. My son Garrett lived 20 minutes away in Cloverfield, a suburb that used to be farmland when he was a boy. He and his wife Priscilla had bought a place out there in 2017, a 4-bedroom colonial with a 2-car garage and a yard big enough that the HOA sent letters about the grass every spring. I helped them buy it. Not a loan, a gift, $60,000 from the account Lorraine and I had built together over 30 years of saying no to vacations we couldn't afford and yes to overtime we didn't want. I gave it to them because they were family and because Garrett said they just needed a little help getting started. I also co-signed the mortgage because his credit wasn't where it needed to be. After that, things kept coming up. The furnace in year 1, the water heater in year 2, Priscilla's car needed a transmission, her words, and she didn't want to go back to work yet because little Nora was only 18 months. I understood that. I did. I sent $3,400 for the transmission. Then there was the roof. Garrett called me on a Tuesday afternoon in October and said there was a leak in the back bedroom. He'd gotten 2 estimates. The cheaper one was $11,000. He didn't ask me directly, he never did, but he laid it out in that particular way he'd learned from somewhere. Patient silence on the other end of the line. Waiting. I paid it. $11,250. I still have the invoice. I want to be honest about something. I didn't resent it then. I told myself this was what fathers did. I told myself Lorraine would have wanted me to help. I told myself they were getting started, that it takes time, that once Nora was in school and Priscilla went back to work, things would level out. I believed all of it. What I did not see was that I had become something specific to them. Not a father, not even a grandfather, though I was that too, and I loved Nora the way you love someone who has no idea yet how complicated the world is. I had become a system, reliable, always available, never questioned. An ATM with a heartbeat. I found out on a Wednesday. I remember the day because I had a dentist appointment in the morning, and I'd been looking forward to stopping by Garrett's afterward to see Nora. She'd just turned 4, and she was in a phase where she wanted to show me every single drawing she made. I kept a folder of them on my kitchen counter. I was in the parking lot of the dental office, checking my phone before I drove over, when the message came in. It was from Priscilla, not Garrett. Priscilla, hi Douglas, we wanted to reach out before you made the drive over. We've been talking a lot lately and we feel like we need some space as a family. We love you, but the drop-ins are getting to be too much. We're trying to build our own routines, and it's hard when there are constant interruptions. We hope you understand. We think some distance would be good for everyone. I read it 3 times. Then I put my phone in my cup holder and sat there in that parking lot for 40 minutes. I didn't call. I didn't text back. I didn't drive over. I drove home. I want to tell you that I was angry. Anger would have been clean. Anger would have meant I knew where I stood and I had something to push against. What I actually felt was something closer to confusion. The kind that comes when you've been operating on a set of assumptions for years and suddenly every single one of them is wrong. I had been going over there roughly twice a week, sometimes 3 times if Priscilla had an errand and needed someone to sit with Nora. I had never once shown up without texting first. I had never stayed past dinner unless they asked me to. I had been careful, I thought, not to be the kind of father-in-law who imposed. Apparently, I had been wrong about that too. That night, I made a bowl of soup. I didn't finish and I watched television. I didn't follow, and eventually I went to bed and lay there until about 2 in the morning thinking about Lorraine. She'd known Priscilla in a way I never quite did. She used to say, in that careful way she had, "Priscilla knows what she wants, Douglas." I used to think that was a compliment. I texted back the next morning, just, "I understand. I hope you're all well." Nothing back from Priscilla. Nothing from Garrett. That was a Friday. The following Monday, I called my bank. I want to be careful here about how I explain this, because it matters. I didn't do what I did out of spite. I did it because somewhere between that parking lot and that sleepless night, I had a thought that was so obvious I couldn't believe it had taken me this long. If I was interrupting their lives, then I should stop interrupting their lives. All the way, the mortgage Garrett and Priscilla had, the one I had co-signed, was structured so that my name was on the loan, but their name was on the deed. That's important. I was liable. I was the backstop. If they missed payments, it landed on me. And over the years, they had missed 2 to 1 in 2021 and 1 in 2022, both times calling me to cover it, both times promising it was temporary. I called my attorney, a man named Sid who had handled Lorraine's estate and who I trusted completely. I explained the situation. He explained my options. I also called the bank that held the note on Priscilla's car, the car I had made the down payment on in 2020, $1,500, because they'd asked. The bank confirmed what I already suspected. Garrett's name was on the loan, not mine. I had no obligation there. What I did have was a storage unit in town, a 10 by 10 that I'd been paying $89 a month on since 2018. It had been Garrett's idea. He had extra furniture from the house that didn't fit, and I'd offered to cover the unit temporarily. He still had a key. 4 years of $89 a month. I cancelled it. 30 days notice. I also reviewed the phone plan. I'd added Garrett and Priscilla to my plan in 2019 because it was easier and cheaper as a bundle. 4 lines for $160 a month. I called the carrier and asked them to remove the 2 additional lines at the end of the billing cycle. I didn't send a message. I didn't explain. They had asked for distance, and I respected it completely. The first thing that happened was the storage unit. Garrett got a notice in the mail because I'd listed him as the alternate contact. He called me on a Thursday afternoon, about 3 weeks after Priscilla's message. "Dad, what's going on with the storage unit?" "I cancelled it," I said. "I'm simplifying my expenses." Pause. "Okay," he said slowly. I have furniture in there." "You do," I said. "You have about 25 days to make arrangements." Another pause. "Is everything okay?" "Everything is fine," I said. "How's Nora?" He told me Nora was good, had started a little art class at the rec center. I told him that sounded wonderful. We talked for 4 minutes. It was polite. It was nothing. 2 weeks after that, the phone lines dropped. Priscilla texted me from a number I didn't recognize. "Douglas, our phones aren't working. Can you call the carrier? Something happened to the plan." I waited a day and then responded, "I changed the plan. You'll want to set up your own account. The carrier can help with that." Nothing back. The thing about the mortgage took longer, and it was more complicated, and I want to be honest that it cost me something. Sid explained that since I was co-signer and not owner, I couldn't simply remove myself without refinancing, and refinancing required Garrett's cooperation. What I could do was stop covering shortfalls, stop being the safety net, let the loan perform on its own. I also told Sid to send a letter, a formal letter, plain language, stating that I would no longer be available as a financial resource for my son and his family. Not punitive, just factual. Effective immediately. Sid offered to soften the language. I told him not to. For about 2 months, nothing happened that I could see. I had my Sundays with my coffee. I went to the senior center on Tuesday mornings for a watercolor class I'd started taking after Lorraine died, which I was not good at, but which I enjoyed anyway. I walked 3 miles every evening around the neighborhood, and I noticed, gradually, that the tightness I'd been carrying in my shoulders for years was beginning to ease. I missed Nora. That was the honest truth of it. I missed her drawings and the way she said my name. She couldn't quite get the grandpa right and called me Grandpa D, which I had loved from the first time she said it. I kept the folder of drawings on my counter. I didn't put it away. In November, about 3 months after Priscilla's message, Garrett called me on a Sunday night. His voice was different, not the careful, managing tone he usually used with me. Something thinner in it. He said they'd gotten behind on the mortgage. 2 months. The bank had sent a notice. He said Priscilla had gone back to work, but it wasn't enough to cover everything, not with the car payment and the utilities, and he stopped himself there, like he'd caught something he wasn't ready to say yet. I let the silence sit. "Dad," he said, "I don't know what to do." And I thought about the $60,000. The roof, the transmission, the phone plan, the storage unit, the down payment on the car, the 2 missed mortgage payments I'd covered without being asked twice. I thought about the parking lot of the dental office and 40 minutes of sitting alone with my phone in the cup holder. I thought about the text message I'd read 3 times. "I know that," I said. "That's hard. Can you—" He started. "No," I said. He was quiet for a moment. "Dad, I love you," I said, "and I love Nora. But I can't be what I've been. Not anymore. Not after the message Priscilla sent. She shouldn't have sent it the way she did," he said. "I told her that." "Okay," I said. "But she did. We talked for a while longer. Not about money. About Nora. About how she'd gotten a little role in the daycare holiday show. About the watercolor class I was taking and how I'd painted a cardinal that looked more like a tomato, but that I was proud of anyway. It was the most honest conversation we'd had in years, maybe, stripped of all the arrangements and requests. Before he hung up, Garrett said, "I don't know how we got here." I said, "I think we got here slowly, and I think I let it happen." He called again in December, and this time he came over. Just him, without Priscilla. He sat at my kitchen table, the same table where I drink my coffee on Sunday mornings, and he looked like a man who had been carrying something heavy for too long without knowing it. He said he was sorry. He said it straight, not as a negotiation, not as preamble to a request. Just sorry. I told him I heard him. We talked about his mother. He hadn't brought her up unprompted in years, and I think we both needed to. He told me he missed her, and I told him I missed her every day, and for a while we just sat with that. Before he left, I took an envelope off the counter. Inside was a card, the kind you find at a drugstore, nothing fancy, and a check. Not for the mortgage. Not for the car. A small amount, enough to take Priscilla and Nora to dinner somewhere nice, or to buy Nora whatever she'd been wanting. I gave it to him because I wanted to, not because I was asked, and there is a difference between those 2 things that I have spent 68 years learning to understand. He looked at it for a moment. "You didn't have to," he said. "I know," I said. "That's why I did." After he left, I poured the last of the coffee and stood at my kitchen window looking at the yard. The hydrangeas I planted along the back fence the summer after Lorraine's diagnosis. She'd wanted them, and I told her we'd plant them together in the spring, and we ran out of spring. I planted them anyway. They come back every year without any help from me, which I have always found quietly remarkable. I thought about what I would tell my younger self if I could. I don't know that I tell him not to help. Helping isn't the problem. Love isn't the problem. The problem was that I'd made myself so available, so reliably present and funded, that I had become invisible. Not a person. A resource. The boundary wasn't the lesson. The boundary was just the moment I stopped pretending I hadn't noticed. There's something that happens when you're in your late 60s and you've buried a spouse and raised a child and worked for 4 decades, and suddenly the house is quiet and someone you love tells you you're too much. You could collapse into it. I understand why people do. Or you could pour a cup of coffee and sit down and decide that the years you have left are yours. I chose the coffee. Nora came over the following Saturday. Garrett dropped her off and stood in the doorway, not coming in, and she ran past his legs and said, "Grandpa D," and showed me a drawing she'd made of a cat wearing a hat, which she had named Gerald. I put Gerald in the folder on the counter. Some things you protect, some things you let go. The trick, the thing I'm still working on at 68 with my tomato red cardinal watercolor drying on the counter, is knowing which is which before someone has to send you a text message to tell you. I've been thinking a lot lately about what it actually means to love someone well. Not the feeling of it. The feeling is easy. It doesn't ask anything of you, but the practice of it. The daily decision of it. When I look back at the years I spent covering Garrett shortfalls, paying for roofs and transmissions and storage units and phone lines, I don't see a bad father. I see a man who confused availability with love, who believed that showing up financially was the same thing as being present. It isn't. I know that now in a way I didn't when Lorraine was alive, didn't when Garrett was a boy, didn't even when I was writing those checks and telling myself it was just what fathers did. What I was actually doing, I think, was making it easier for everyone around me to not have to grow. And that's not love. That's something closer to fear, wearing love's clothing. The cause was never the money. The cause was that I had spent years building a dynamic where my son didn't have to face the full weight of his own choices because I was always there to soften the landing. Priscilla's message, cold as it was, sent from her phone instead of his, clinical as a bill, was the outcome of that. When you train people to see you as a system, they eventually start treating you like one. I don't say that to excuse what she did. I say it because it's honest. And honesty is the only thing I have left to offer at 68. The harder truth is that what I did after, the phone calls, the cancelled lines, the letter Sid sent, wasn't punishment. I want to be clear about that. It was just reality, finally arriving. It was me stepping back and letting the weight land where it had always belonged. That's not cruelty. That's actually the most respectful thing you can do for another adult, believe they are capable of carrying their own life. Garrett came back, not because I forced him to, not because I withheld enough to make him desperate, but because something real was finally between us. Not transactions, not arrangements. Just two people who missed each other and didn't quite know how to say it. That conversation at my kitchen table was the first one we'd had in years where neither of us was managing the other. It cost us a lot to get there. I'm not sure it had to cost that much, but it got us there. What I know now is this. You cannot give your way into being valued. You cannot fund your way into being seen. The people who will truly respect you are the ones who know you would survive without them, and choose you anyway. Everything else is just a comfortable arrangement that falls apart the moment it becomes inconvenient. I still have Nora's drawings on the counter. Gerald the cat in the hat is right on top. Some mornings I look at it and think about what I want the rest of my life to look like. Not what I owe, not what I'm needed for, but what I actually want. That's a question I should have been asking for a long time. I'm asking it now. That's enough.